Welcome back. We're thrilled that you've joined us all day, and now we get to the really fun part. We get to ask our students anything, but we have one little trick to this today. We have one student, Dasney, who's at University of Waterloo and Laurier, who you heard lots from earlier today. And then we have my colleague, Ruth. Ruth is actually the brains behind SheBiz this year, and she's also joining us on the panel. So we're thrilled to have you both. Welcome. For the sake of those watching, Ruth, we have a whole bunch of questions coming up, but just for the sake of those watching, do you just want to give us a really quick intro on your background, what university you went to, just so that everyone who's trying to enter their questions into Hopin has a good idea of where you're at?
For sure. So I actually I'm from Ottawa. I was raised in Ottawa, and I went to Carleton University for their international business program. So for those of you who haven't heard about it, it's a 4-year business degree, specifically in international business, where I specialized in international marketing and trade. And I have a minor in Spanish. So I actually spent a year abroad in Spain while I was in school. And then after I graduated university, I worked as a recruiter for Carleton. So if you guys have ever seen those, like the university recruiters who come in and do those really cheesy speeches telling you why you should come to their university, I used to do them around the GTA. So if you're in grade 12, you might have seen me a couple years ago. But that's a little bit about me. I now work obviously at WCM, but I've worked in a little bit of everywhere, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of sales.
I'm so glad you could join us today, Ruth. All right, so over to the questions. We have lots of them coming through, so thank you for that. Here's a good one. For business students in university, how much do you think taking co-op will benefit your resume and yourself in general? What are the pros and cons?
Yeah, so right now I'm in a co-op program. And one thing to note, so if you don't know what co-op is, it's similar to a regular university program. You still take the 4 years of courses. However, you have the option to do an internship instead of over the summer. Maybe you can do it over the fall and winter. So I'm in a co-op program right now, and some things I've noticed is employers, especially in capital markets, they hire for the same roles year round. So you're not necessarily at a disadvantage in that sense. And I find in the winter and fall, it's a lot less competitive because you only have those co-op students applying, and it's not every single student from every single Canadian school, which is great. The one thing is a lot of co-op programs tend to be 5 years long. So you might have to have that extra year, but you do come out with maybe 4 or 5 terms of work experience. So each term is typically 4 months. So you do have a lot of time to kind of build up your resume. You can do this without a co-op program and just do these internships in the summer. But what's great is with a lot of these capital markets roles, you can't necessarily jump into a lot of the competitive roles. You have to maybe build up, like work in so for example, if you want to do investment banking, you might have to work in a different area of the bank before you do investment banking. That's what I find a lot of students end up going down that path. So it gives you multiple internships in terms to actually build up that experience. And then you can say, okay, well, I didn't like this role, I want to try this. Well, you have that experience behind you to actually help you get that role, and you build up your network along the way. So kind of a lot of things. Either way, it depends on the program you're going into, whether co-op or no co-op is suitable. Some schools offer it and some schools don't.
That was a super complete answer. I love it. Ruth, I can't imagine, but do you have anything to add to that?
So not particularly. I'll kind of put my recruiter hat on and say, you might find programs that don't have co-op, like Dasney mentioned, as an option. So for example, I had that where I couldn't add a co-op formally to my degree. So what I had to do was exactly what Dasney said. I had to go out, I had to look for internship opportunities, random jobs, especially since my initial goal was to get really into marketing. It was a little bit more difficult for me not being in a co-op program, even though I had the opportunity to study abroad. Looking back, I wish I could have done both. So that's something as a high school student, I wish I had known a little bit more about. And you'll hear a lot of about the co-op program at Waterloo, the co-op programs at Ivy or at Queen's. And that's something that I think a lot of people, especially in high school, should take into account is, do I want job experience? How important is it to what I'm studying? And, what am I willing to do? Am I willing to sacrifice a study abroad to have a co-op program? And really take that into account when you're choosing where to apply and where to go.
There's such hard choices, but in the end, They're really great choices to have because all of them end up being really good choices. Well, how about this one? This is coming from a student in our audience. I heard that your marks can sometimes drop when you're getting into your first year of university, and there'll probably be at least a few times that you fail a midterm. For first-year students who struggle with the overwhelming workload and do not perform quite as well, do you have any tips for them to catch up quickly with the university pace?
Okay, I'll start off. Yeah, so that is generally what people say in first year, your marks drop. And I think there's actually a study done by Waterloo that said approximately on average in engineering, at least, students from grade 12 to first year, their mark drops about 11%. So I don't know how that applies to other programs or other schools. But I think what students struggle with is not necessarily the workload, but how different the structure is in university compared to high school. Because in high school, you will have teachers that say, okay, this assignment is due in 2 days, this is due whenever. But in university, you have to really make your own schedule and be able to structure that for yourself, especially if it's online, because sometimes your classes are pre-recorded, so you have to actually make your own schedule. So one tip I've generally learned is just over organize your schedule. So have your complete plan for the day, what you want to accomplish. And that way you will have all your deadlines in front of you and you don't miss it. And I think just taking like a buffer time, you might not be able to complete what you want in the specified time you might have allocated. So just have that extra time for yourself. And then if you do complete it, you have some free time to do whatever you want. So it's just all about this, how you organize your time and your days. That will make all the difference.
Terrific. Ruth, some follow-ups?
Yeah, so I think this is something that I've been asked. I'm the oldest in my family, so a lot of my siblings and cousins are starting university. And it's something that I think, Dasni, you hit it right on the head. A lot of it is time management. So in high school, it's, you're given very structured ways to approach work. All of your lessons are tied usually to like 5 or 10, not even 10%, 5, 2, 3%, worth projects. And then you come to university and you have 3 tests and they're each worth 33%, or your exam is worth 50%. And I think that that's something that's really difficult. And obviously that's harder in first year because you have to really adjust to that process. So I think for everyone, you're going to struggle. I think I don't want to give you, too nice of a look into university. It's going to be a struggle. It's definitely going to be an adjustment, but it's what you make of it. So it's how much work you go into prepping, and maybe time management isn't the problem. Maybe your issue is having to do the presentations. A lot of these business or commerce degrees have courses that are entirely just presentations. So maybe that's what your struggle is going to be. But in terms of grades, you'll hear that a lot, but a lot of it is around time management and understanding that one test could be worth 50% of your whole grade. And that's really what it comes down to.
Sounds so daunting. You're making me sweat just listening to you.
It's still fun, though. It's still fun.
Life is all about failures. The sooner you learn to build that resilience to pick yourself up and figure out why did that go wrong, the better off you'll be. Sometimes it's really not about the mark. It's about what you do after you get the mark, and then figuring out, okay, that didn't go very well. How do I actually rebuild this in a way that it might go better next time? And then reaching out everywhere for advice. Students who are older than you, maybe your TA, maybe your prof, maybe older siblings. And because life is about failures. I fail every day. Ruth gets to watch it some days. And it's really about picking yourself up and figuring out, what do I do now? Here's one from a grade 12 student who says, what is the best piece of advice you would give to a grade 12 student who is applying to multiple competitive business programs?
Yeah, so one thing that I struggled with in grade 12 was those essay pieces that a lot of these schools ask you to write, and they're all structured very differently. Some of them are shorter, some of them are full essays. But one thing is a lot of them ask very similar things. So you can always reuse kind of a very, like if you have one really good story or one really good message you want to get across, you can just restructure that to actually suit whatever it is that application form might be asking. And this is not something I knew in grade 12, but actually a lot of these schools host recruitment events for specific programs, especially those really competitive ones. So, and now that they're online, they're a lot more accessible. So definitely go on those schools' websites and reach out to or just see if you can find when those recruitment events are. A lot of schools also have ambassadors for specific programs. So reach out to them and ask them all the questions you have, and they went through the application process as well. So there's a lot of good resources you can just find on that school's website. I would say if you're feeling really overwhelmed, don't feel free to actually use those resources available to you.
Ruth, anything to add?
No, that was a great answer.
Okay, I thought so too.
Yeah, that was a great answer.
I
Nothing
was
to add.
curious what's Ruth going to add to this.
Nope. That was a great answer.
So we've got another question coming in about scholarships. So they're asking, do you have any advice? How do you find scholarships when you're applying for university? What are some tips and tricks there?
Yeah, so I remember in my high school in the student services office, they had this like giant binder with all these different scholarships. So I would say reach out to your student services or some kind of administration you have in your school because they would know best. There's actually a lot of scholarships. Something my guidance counselor told me that are for specific groups. And a lot of the times they're so niche that not many people know about it. So apply to just Google and apply to as many scholarships as you can. A lot of workplaces have scholarships. So if your parents or your family members work in a larger organization, ask them if they have scholarships. And yeah, that's how I kind of navigated. I'm not sure if Ruth or Camilla have any advice.
Yeah, so one thing, there were a couple areas that I actually didn't know until I was in my second and third year of university. One of them is a lot of the places that students work have scholarships. So Dassy was talking about like the larger employers. I worked at McDonald's in grades 12 to second year, and they had like 3 or 4 scholarships at my McDonald's. I've heard Home Depot does this as well. So you can look there if you're, working in that environment. But the other thing too that I saw is that a lot of the universities, I'll speak to Carleton because I'm most familiar with that, but I know Carleton, once you've applied, you can actually go into their bursaries and scholarships kind of, it's basically a web page where you can search and say, I'm a first year student, maybe you're a first generation African, let's say. And so I'm Ethiopian. If I look that up, it'll come up with different scholarships that you fit the criteria in. So you can look at different schools that you're interested in to see if they have those types of websites available for you to see, okay, I know for a fact that I'd like to go to University of Toronto. Let me look at their scholarship forms and see what I can or can't qualify for.
Amazing advice. Okay, so Ruth, that was a good lead in to the next one. What do you think is most important, to get some work experience or to really pursue some other extracurricular works?
Maybe I'll start. I personally think it is the work experience, and I'll explain kind of my experience to that. So I, for 15 or 16 years, played ringette, which for those of you who may not know, is a very small sport that only females play, and not a lot of people play it or know about it. So I was really passionate about that, played really competitively all through high school. And when I moved on to university, the school at Carleton had a team. And so I really wanted to value that and focused on that my first 2 years. But when I came back from exchange, I realized that I was now 2 years or 3 years behind everybody because I selected my extracurricular instead of my work experience. 5 years later, no regrets now. Obviously, I have a job and I'm happy where I'm at. But it was definitely more difficult for me, and I had to do a lot more work in order to make up for that. So personally, my experience, I would say try and find a balance. Don't get rid of either. Try and find a balance between the two. But I think work experience, if you're really, really, really targeting a specific area in finance or capital markets, definitely make sure to look at ways your extracurricular can get you there, or you can balance the two.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, especially with capital markets. A lot of these internships are so competitive. What you really do need to focus on the recruitment process. Once it starts, it's very rigorous. I found at least, but a lot of these employers really value people who have unique experiences, so whether it's a sport or just a club that you're interested in, as long as you have something you're passionate about, that helps and complements your internship search. So don't feel like you need to necessarily sacrifice one. But if like I personally had to choose a balance and I had to sacrifice one, I would definitely go towards the internship as well.
That's some great advice. I think too, I heard a recruiter who worked at a university say about high school students working that it's really quite viewed equally. But one of the things that students sometimes forget is that they highlight where they worked, but they forget to say what they learned. So as opposed to saying that they learned time management or how to manage children or manage many tasks at the same time, they just say they worked at place X for so long and their boss loved them. And so it's interesting how the same experience could be really viewed differently depending how you choose to speak about it. We have endless questions, but here we go. Here's another one. What dual degree or major minor combination do you think is really relevant in today's rapidly changing world?
Yeah. So if you're looking at finance specifically, I find that math and computing is really valuable. So for example, a lot of these banks, they're trying to automate a lot of their trading functions. So they need computer science students or students that actually understand how to code to come in and help with that. So I found across the finance world, definitely something in computing or math, or even something along the data science field. They also like those very analytical skills because finance has very quantitative aspect to it. So I know IB has some great double degree programs with their business school. Waterloo has some, and many other schools, even U of T has a bunch as well.
Terrific. Well, Ruth, were you going to add something?
Oh, no, that was a great answer.
Okay. Here's one, and it's actually been asked a couple times in slightly different ways, but essentially some students are asking about what if it's only recently that they've become interested in business and they've really dedicated a lot of time to other career paths, example, the arts. They don't really have time to build a really strong business background. Do you have any advice for them in terms of how they can pivot and make this shift from one area into another area pretty quickly in time to meet their university applications?
That's a great question. So in grade 12, I was actually like split between, do I want to go into like health sciences and become a doctor, or do I want to go into finance? So those are very different roles. And so one thing that universities look for is not necessarily, do you really know business? Do you really know finance? It's kind of what are the skills you bring into it. So a lot of these skills you learn in those extracurriculars or just working in a different field, you can just transfer along to finance. So I would say if you don't have any business knowledge at all, don't worry. Universities aren't looking for you to be an expert at these things because all these business courses start from the very basic bare bones. So as long as you can show, in this extracurricular, I was a great communicator, I showed leadership here, then universities will really value that instead of you just showing, oh, I have business skills.
Ruth, you look like you're satisfied with that answer completely.
She's just hitting it out of the park.
No.
That's basically what I was going to say. Yeah, I'll just really add quickly to my experience. I, didn't want to do STEM at all. I wanted to be a lawyer and had zero interest in business and just didn't want to do it at all. And it starts from scratch, but also you always have to remember the transferable skills. So Dasney hit it on their head with the communication skills, organization skills, time management, leadership. Those are all transferable skills that even if you don't have the degree and you want to apply, those are things that are genuinely hard to find sometimes. So make sure that you're always just mentioning that you have those and working on those skills.
Terrific advice. You cannot mess up the path this early. That much is guaranteed. How about this one? This one's coming from a grade 10 student in our audience, and she's curious about what extracurricular activities do universities look to see in applications? What kind of story should you be trying to build over your time?
Okay. So this is a great question. I was talking to one of the recruiters at Waterloo just on a math orientation day or something, and then he said he really liked when students just show they're passionate about something. So they're not looking for a specific thing like a sport or a specific club. They're more so looking, so what did you gain out of this club? So maybe you can say, oh, I didn't really like business, but I tried this club and it wasn't for me. Well, it shows that you like trying new things. You're a risk taker. So it's more so about like, what did you learn from this club? And as long as you can derive those things from your extracurriculars, I think that's kind of just the bottom line you should always look for.
Okay, I think that's a great answer. I also think they like looking for some consistency. You've tried different things, and then you have one or two things that are pretty consistent. I think the combination makes it really nice. So what about this one? You know, if you're looking for a career in business and you're planning to start your post-secondary education at a college, is it easy to transfer to university? Can you make that switch easily, or do you really need to start off at a university? I recognize neither of you are experts in this, but maybe just some casual advice might be useful.
I can speak to this more because of my experience in previous jobs that I've had. University does not equal success necessarily. I think there's value in going to college if you feel that that's the best fit for you, especially if you're somebody who, for instance, is more of a practical learner or likes to, you know, they teach things at a more granular level, I find, than university does. So university will teach you at a very high level, will teach you the industry, but you won't actually get the same practical level of understanding or teaching that you would get at a college. And for some, that's better. For some, that's worse. So I think that, you know, if you choose to go to college, by no means is at the end of the road. Like Camilla said, you know, you can never mess up this early. I had a friend who wanted to be a dentist, went to school for a year for that, and then is now an accountant. So, you know, you can never kind of mess up this early, and college is definitely a way to go. Or if you even want to dabble in business or dabble in animation and you think, you know what, I want to go do a full degree after that, there are a lot of programs as well that are good transferring programs. Like you can start at a college and then move into your third year at university once they have a relationship between the college and the school. So if college seems like a good choice for you, I 100% think you should go down that path and pursue it, because by no means does it stop you from succeeding.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing I want to add is a lot of the big firms are looking for diversity in their hires these days. So not just people from the same top tier business schools, they want people from across like different schools to get different opinions and different people. So when I was doing my internship at Scotiabank, we had 600 students, and a lot of them are also from colleges as well. So there's no real like clear cut path to go to one job, and college is always a way there as well.
Terrific. So we have and we're pretty much out of time, but we have time for one more question. This is someone who's thinking about doing a double degree. They're specifically thinking about mathematics and business administration, just like you, Desni. And they're wondering, what do you think of this program? As well as, do either of you have some comments on the benefits or like the pros and cons of doing double degrees?
Yeah, so I know a lot of students ask me like, do you like this program? Is it hard? Is it double the work? So it's not double the work, because you still maintain the same course load as you would in any other university program. So it's just 5 courses every semester. One thing about this program though is you have to really love math, because most of the time I find I'm spending doing my math assignments. So if you don't love math to your very bones, you might start kind of realizing, oh, I'm spending a lot of time doing math and I don't know if I like it. So that's just one thing to be cautious about. And sorry, I lost track of the second part of your question.
I think you covered most of it. It was really just the pros and cons of doing those double degrees and how much you're enjoying your program. Ruth, any closing words here?
My only closing word is I'm so happy with all the questions that are coming in. They're great questions, and it's really nice to see that obviously Dasni has been hitting every single answer out of the park. But I want to just stress that you don't have to know everything. You could choose, like, I don't know what the actual day is that you have to submit your application, but you could apply to 10 programs, and on the very last day that they're due in grade 12, change your mind completely, and that's still okay. You could be third year and decide to change, and that's still fine. So I know it feels like the be all end all. This was a very, it's exciting day, but just remember that each path is a little bit weird, which is cliche, but getting more information is always great.
I can't think of a better note to end on. Dasni, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for really sharing some very insightful things. Ruth, thank you as well. You're an excellent colleague and obviously can give terrific advice to high school students. And with that, we have one last 5-minute break here. So another wellness break. This one ends in 5 minutes. So at 3:10 Eastern. I was thrilled you guys could all join us because I think this Ask Me Anything session was really powerful. So thank you both, Ruth and Dasni, very much.